my life's mission is ensuring that buildings actually deserve the trust people place on them. For one event that I would not forget ever was
the built environment is an incredibly important thing, but it's very interesting and fulfilling to hear that your career position now is not just one of a job, it's a passion, isn't it?
It wasn't a failure of steel and concrete. It was more than that. It was families broken. The more we work together, the better the product, and we should be open to collaboration.
We can make a difference if we all pull together and do it now.
Yes, I mean, that's what the Building Safety Act is all about.
How do we, as an industry now, demonstrate the value of trust within the work that we do?
It's clear, we have to.
Welcome to the next episode of the Build Insights podcast. Today I'm joined by Chin. Chin is the Director of Structural Diagnostics based in Weybridge. You've travelled all the way up to Manchester to see me today. Thank you very much for coming. How was your journey?
It was amazing. I mean, considering the weather,
yeah,
I never expected it to be so comfortable. For some reason, I think today has been different from other sunny days. So, yeah, it was good.
Good. There's a bit of a chill in the air, which is nice. It's refreshing.
Yes, and air conditioning indoor trains do work. So,
oh, well, you got the right train. Because I was on one yesterday from London and it was not.
Yeah.
It was the opposite.
Oh, no.
It was horrendous.
oh, no.
But nevertheless, here we are, and it's great to see you. We've been talking about this for a while. Obviously, we see each other sort of sporadically at events and stuff. I think the last time we met was UK Reef up in Leeds there, which was a fantastic event, and we'll see you at many more. But I really wanted to learn more about you, and what you stand for. It's important. So rather than me fire a load of questions at you, perhaps you could tell us sort of what you do, how you do it, and sort of the lead up from how you got to this position.
Okay.
Tell me a bit about yourself.
Oh, long story. Have we got time?
We have.
Yes. So I'm Chin, and I lead structural diagnostics. But the long engineering story for me, my engineering story started years and years ago, Ben. Unfortunately, I witnessed the aftermath of a building collapse years ago as a teenager. I grew up in Nigeria. I was born in Nigeria. I grew up in Nigeria. I'm sure you can pick it up from the accent as well.
Yeah, great accent.
Yeah, love. Oh, thank you.
It is.
Lovely, lovely childhood and everything. But one event that I would not forget ever was witnessing, like I said, a building collapse. Yeah, it was, a pile of concrete and steel.
Wow.
And I was standing there. I still remember. I have the photo or a picture of it in my mind as I speak now. And I was there, and you could hear voices of children that had been trapped in the debris. And what it hit me then, what I took away from that was, it wasn't a failure of steel and concrete. It was more than that. It was families broken, and it was trust broken.
Sure.
Yeah, and I decided, I would like to do something about that. And so I went on to, I left the country. I studied at Imperial College, 2005. And ever since, it's been moving from one aspect of engineering to the other. And up until now, when I lead structural diagnostics, and I can say that my life's mission really is ensuring that buildings actually deserve the trust people place on them.
Yeah. The built environment is an incredibly important thing, but it's very interesting and fulfilling to hear that your career position now is not just one of a job or even a career or even a vocation, actually. It's a passion, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I can see that.
It is. It is a passion, a burning one, actually. And but it's interesting that the industry as a whole is embracing a culture shift where we want to see buildings do better at protecting the trust that the public places on them, whether it's through insurance products, through more stringent clerks of works, um, what have you, or even engineering, which is the perspective I come from. So it's satisfying to see how things have moved from
Well,
20 years
absolutely.
ago.
I mean, do you agree? The industry at the moment is asking us to be more accountable as professionals,
Yes.
which is something I embrace and welcome, incidentally. But it's not met by the same level of enthusiasm by everybody, seemingly. There are a lot of, for valid reasons, there's a lot of delay, there's a lot of cost, there's a lot of associated damages, if you will. But it's worth it.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? It's worth it. There has to be a fundamental change, and I think that we are lucky enough, some might pull a face at that, but lucky enough to be part of that change and in our positions in our careers in terms of how long we've got left to work.
Yes.
We can make a difference if we all pull together and do it now.
Yes. I mean, that's what the Building Safety Act is all about, and that's what it's trying to achieve. But I dare say that the Building Safety Act, being legislation, can only do that much. It can only bring in compliance rules, etc. But the culture shift has to be us. It has to be done in collaboration. Everyone has to sit at the table, and forums like this builds that avenue for us to come together and talk about it and improve the industry. So I perfectly agree.
It has to be done willingly as well. It
Exactly.
has to be embraced. It's not something you can sort of. Well, I was going to say it's not something you can just bang your way through. You can. Ultimately, you can. There's ways of doing it, but actually, if you use it as an opportunity to get further insight into professionals, into the end user, into the product itself, the building, it reveals a lot in terms of the shortfall of our current approach to construction and the built environment. So it's really interesting to sort of go from there. You mentioned a word in your introduction of yourself, which was a big word in my book, and it was trust. What does trust mean to you?
Oh, yeah. Trust means everything. And I guess in our industry, it should mean everything. Trust means, I'll paint a picture, Ben.
Yeah.
Just imagine yourself driving on the motorway, right? And you are approaching a bridge. Yeah. The only reason why you don't hit the brakes at that point is because you trust that bridge.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know anything about the foundations. You don't know anything about steel. You don't know anything about, test reports or the geotechnics. You just believe or are made to believe that you'll be fine. And so trust is everything in the sense that we actually, as an industry, tell the public to believe in us.
Yeah. By default.
By default.
There is an ovation of trust placed upon us by the people that use our buildings.
Exactly. And you know what's even more interesting? The people that use our buildings. So we're talking about the developers. The developers are also people. The people betting on that structure. The lenders who believe in the assets. We're talking about, the occupiers of the building. Yes, they have to, trust. But we're also talking about the insurers, who bet chances on the products. So it's that importance that we should be placing not really on compliance. Compliance should only be a tool, but we should, to achieve that culture shift, we should be understanding trust and having a responsibility or that accountability to not breaking that trust. I think if we did that and saw it from that perspective, we'll go further with what we're trying to achieve as an industry.
Yeah. I think that trust is a is more than a process. Compliance is a set of benchmarks. Compliance gives us a standard to work towards, but trust is more than a process, and it carries value.
Yeah.
So how do we as an industry now demonstrate the value of trust within the work that we do? And then more importantly, how do we instill that value into people that will eventually replace us in our industry? Do you have any thoughts along those lines?
Oh, yes, sure, definitely. Now, how do we demonstrate that value? It's clear. You know, we have to, I mean, there's so many examples of recent collapses, and I'm going to go into this, but by no means am I calling out any construction sites.
No,
but
maybe don't name them.
No,
but,
surely.
but by all
Surely.
means, give us some examples, because I'm interested in this actually, because
yeah,
we're in different parts of the industry whilst it's the same one, and we don't necessarily hear about the same things.
no. So, well, this particular one was in the news, and it's a building in San Francisco. So don't worry, it's very far away.
Outside of our legislation. Yeah.
Very far away. But this building was completed in 2009,
Okay.
and within 6 months, they noticed it was sinking, or it had displacements, vertical displacements, and within a year, it's leaning, and this is a 54-story
Wow.
building, and it's so interesting because people were allowed to move in into the flats in this 54-story building, and it was only until about 2 years after completion that any remediation
Was
put in place. So that's really terrible, because, for instance, LDI, for instance, the latent defect insurance product. I'm sorry.
No, it's quite all right. I'm just having a joke.
Yeah, but yeah, such a product, for instance, would have immediately triggered the right response and avoided all that litigation, the time wasting in litigation, and a repair would have been on the way. By the way, this is over £100 million dollars in the repair. Sure. So huge. And so that's where the right insurance products would have helped in protecting trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you've had a period of 3 years after post-completion, when there's a reputational damage, when there's a scare to the public, and there's a lot that's come from it. So that's just an instance where the right product, the right insurance product, would have protected trust. So,
and why do you think that is? Obviously, the insurance in its own right is obviously a fund that is going to lead to the remediation, but that has to be triggered by a process, and that process. I know the answer to this, by the way, but I'm just so I don't want to go into it too much from my perspective. I'd rather hear from you. It's not just about the product, right? It's about the people. It's about the positioning of those people within the process. I am going to just go through it myself, if you don't mind, because I'm more interested in terms of whether you agree with me or not. LDI works because it is monitored by independent people that have a non-biased approach to that situation. If you put people in there that are invested, that are liable, that will come out on the bottom of the situation, no pun intended, I think you will always get a biased approach. And so for me, part of the reason that LDI is such an important and effective insurance product is because of the way that it's protected by surveying and engineering and all the associated professionals.
Yes, yes.
Does that make sense?
I perfectly agree with you.
That's the first time. not many people ever do.
I perfectly agree with you. I think, well, I'll go and talk about a little bit more about LDI, but the fact that it has a technical inspection service as part of its product is great. It means that there is a commitment by the product itself to protect trust. It's not just a blanket contract of some sort. So I think the point here is that there's so many stakeholders in every project, and the engineering contribution to projects is under technical inspection services, the clerks of works, is just as important as having the right insurance product, and it's just as important as every other stakeholder's input to the process. And I think one thing I'd like to chip in here at this point is, especially for developers, get the right professionals early in the process.
Absolutely.
Don't wait for it.
Let's bang that drum for a minute, because it's something that it constantly gets forgotten. And I am seeing small improvements from my perspective, but because it costs, I think, is my only real analysis of it, is let's bring them in as late as possible, because then we limit the cost. Okay, but fundamentally understanding that design through the design phase, having input to that design phase and saying, look, have you considered this? I've seen this before, this happened, is so important. From my perspective, as an auditor, as a clerk of works, as a construction quality professional. But I can't imagine it couldn't be. It must be so much more important for you, because, well, surely, you tell me.
Surely, really important for us, because there are a lot of design. In fact, at the beginning of a project is where most of the risk resides. And once the design is done, some risk could be designed into the design. So it's incredibly important that sooner rather than later, the right professionals are brought into the mix. And I'd like to also say that, yes, it's some developers will say, I've got the right architectural team, I've got the right engineering team, structural engineering team, but that's not enough. You need every stakeholder early, because every stakeholder has a part to play that might impact the way the other stakeholder carries out their work in you achieving the best product.
So I personally think that we should welcome peer review. I'm happy for people to look at my work, not in an overly critical sense, and there is always a risk of that, but I think if we can break down some of those barriers and say, well, look, this is my perspective on this, can you see anything I haven't? That creates value, doesn't it? And so to be able to work openly and to collaboratively at the earliest possible stage and say, well, actually, I can see where you're going with that, but have you considered this?
Exactly.
Would be a far safer way to create these things.
Yeah, definitely. For instance, the building defects I discussed earlier in San Francisco, without mentioning the name of the project. Surely those defects would have been avoided if there was some form of peer review, in a way. If that particular failure was to do with a defective soil assumption about the soils.
Okay. So it's foundation-led, was it?
It was foundation-led, exactly.
Okay.
So if there was independent reviews of the soil's capability, maybe that would have been avoided.
Yeah.
If there was some independent geotechnical investigations on time or at the beginning of the project, that could have been avoided.
And sometimes it's just for that person to say, look, can you just get that done?
Exactly.
Ultimately, you design something based on the knowledge that you've got, right?
Yeah.
But typically there's always more information available. It's just that sometimes people, without being disrespectful, don't know where to look for it. And that's where bringing these peer reviews in and some saying, well, actually, it might be worth getting a more in-depth geotechnical review done here.
Yeah.
And then flipping heck, all of a sudden this doesn't work. We now got a pilot or whatever it is,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the point is you spend a few thousands ahead and save yourself from spending millions later. And other than that, you're protecting trust. You want people to believe they can live safely in a multi-story building. You impact a lot on the industry when things like this happen, reputationally, and we don't want that.
I think the danger is that people will believe it, regardless. We mentioned at the beginning, if you buy a property or you rent a property, the human nature assumption as a non-construction professional is this is fine. How many times do you walk into a train station, a bus station, you walk into a hotel, and you go, well, this is a hotel. It's got signs on the wall that this is great.
Exactly. That's true.
The reality is, no, not always. In fact, there's still some fundamental issues around. Let's use hotels as an example. Nothing in particular, but I've over the years, and I won't name names for all the same reason, but I've worked on remediation of specifically cladding remediation on hotels that I've stayed in previously. And you go back and you see these things stripped and you think, I can't believe I slept in there, and that's an insight that we get that 99% of the public don't get. Exactly. And that gives us a huge level of responsibility as an industry. And that's sort of what we're talking about today. I want to hijack this just for a minute. I'm not going to take it away from you, but I'm working on something and it's not for my personal gain. It's for industry gain. And I just wondered whether you might give a perspective on it. Okay. There's communications with the powers that be, if you will, around where the role of clerk of works fits in to the industry from a more official perspective. And it's quite often, the role is quite often offset against, well, we've got building control. Why do we need more? I know the answers, but I'd love your perspective on that. And what I'm trying to do, let me frame it like this. How do we fill the gap between compliance and quality?
Clerks of works. You see, it's incredibly important that construction is monitored. And that's what you guys stand for. It's inspections are different from, it's not enough to do the one-off inspection. It's important that there is a full oversight of what has gone on. When we talk about the golden thread and the BSA, it's the same thing, how you gather every information possible to ensure that you have a full coverage of what has gone on during construction.
Yeah.
You can't do this from one perspective. Definitely the clerks of works have a training, have experience, have exactly what they stand for. You can't shut down one aspect of the process and expect to get the same quality. So I really don't understand where that thinking will be coming from. We need more. We need more participators, not less.
Yeah.
We
need more investment, don't we, in terms of, and I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about time, I'm talking about communication, I'm talking about integration to a project, and that understanding of the nuances. You quite rightly said, and I come from a building control background, so I say this without bias, is you are given a snapshot in time as a building control officer, as a building control inspector, whatever you want to call it. And that snapshot is presented to you at sort of mandatory stages to establish compliance to the building regulations. But for me, there's a huge gap between compliance and quality. And this is where the LDI market fits in as well, because when we look at a building on behalf of LDI providers, it's not just, is this building legal and safe? Of course, they're two very important aspects of it, but will this building stand the test of time in use for the foreseeable future with reasonable maintenance. And I think that is sometimes where things go awry, because we need to be able to say with confidence, look, we feel that the right things have been done here, the right cultures have been involved in the management of this project, that as well as the workmanship, as well as the materials used and all the usual aspects that form a building, that say that we are confident that this building will at least, and let's be frank, last at least 10 years with reasonable maintenance. It's non-viable, but wouldn't it be great if we could do that for 40 years? There'll be insurers out there now throwing things at the screen, but it's impossible to do is the reality, because the lifespan of a building, and we don't get to monitor the maintenance, etc. We do to a degree, but not throughout the lifespan of the building, and buildings change hands, etc. But what's important is that we create a culture that defaults to that position already. And that's what we've got to do.
That's exactly what needs to happen. Creating a culture that defaults to that. And I think if that's what we're trying to achieve, or if that's what the collective work supports, then we should embrace it. It's a very valued part of the mix. And you've just mentioned 40 years. I know, like you said.
Sorry.
I mean, 10 years is almost a swear word already. But we really want to guarantee trust forever. That's what we're.
And I think it's not to say 40 years. I pluck that number out of the sky, but there are ways of doing that through mechanism as well. Not I was going to say not just trust. No, the trust has to be maintained, but there are systems that I've got ideas about, systems about sort of revisiting projects on a periodic basis after the LDI period, etc., way beyond the contractor liability period. And I think that there are mechanisms that we can put into place there, but I keep defaulting back to the same position, and that is that people have to want to do it.
Yeah.
So you and we've got a bit to go yet in our careers, which I'm grateful for, because it means that we can put things together and we can really work on these things. And there's many people, well, there's not many, but there's certainly a few more people like us that want to do this, and we embrace that, and we want to increase those numbers as quickly as possible. How do we do that?
Okay. AI.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm interested, because I wasn't expecting you to say
I know.
that.
I know. Now, the reluctance over the years to do exactly what you're explaining has mainly been with how to manage the data, or how to retrieve the data years later when needed. If you've ever been involved in an expert witness case, it's very, very painful, where you're trying to dig out one information or the other, or defend it with this or that, and no one likes it.
And timelines become a very, very big part of that, don't they?
Exactly. When did this happen? How can we prove? But now we've got AI, and we could begin to use AI in organizing, categorizing data to allow us achieve what you're describing. We just need systems, platforms. We need to create systems, that will manage this information, manage this data, and make it easy to implement. I think that's what we need in industry.
So a universal data center really is what we're talking about here, isn't it? AI involved, to whatever impact, but universal data, the freedom to share data and understand and learn quicker, I think is what you're saying. Exactly. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, exactly. So not just digitally, but AI-enabled categorization, and I don't know the best word to use, but we need to be able to understand trends as well. We need to be able to feed in information into systems and derive some intelligence from it and say these are the patterns. Balconies are susceptible to these sort of defects during construction.
So a great way to do that is claims data. Right, we keep talking about the LDI market, and it's a huge industry, and it's rife with data. So with every insurance comes the potential for a claim.
Yeah.
Now, and I think we can do this better. This is why I'm picking on this subject, because it's something I feel like we can do better. I don't quite know how to do it, so maybe someone listening to this does, right? And that's the whole point of this podcast. So with an insurance policy comes the potential for claim. We know that millions of claims are made on a yearly basis. Within that process, there has to be, by definition, trends. There has to be one issue in particular, I'm fairly confident I know what it is, that leads to a claim and a claim of a certain size.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's categories inside categories here.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we understand to be one of those issues is flat roofs and tanked areas, so substructure tanking, flat roofs, and because of the failure of each of those leads to fairly catastrophic impact, whether it be internal finishes, electrical systems, whatever. Yeah. That's an example. But picking up on what you said, we need to be able to look at things, right, and say, well, actually, this is our leading claim factor. Yeah. Beyond that is this, or maybe you put that in a box that says building envelope. Yeah. Then you've got missing shear links. Yeah. Happens far less, but when it happens, right? Exactly. So that sits slightly higher in terms of the risk profile, but not as often. So maybe it fits a little bit to the left, if you get my meaning. I'm trying to create an image. Yeah. But the reality is we don't share that information properly at the moment. Maybe insurers do within their own network, and quite rightly, it's their data. But what if we had a world of universal sharing? What if we had a world where we all chucked our 10 pence in and we said, look, this is what we're experiencing. And we can, as an inspector, we can say, well, yeah, but you know what? You can fix 90% of these flat roof details, as an example being by ensuring that the flat roof goes over the parapet. Yeah. Because it doesn't always. Yeah. But when it does, it mitigates a lot of risk. Yeah. Yeah. Simple thing. Yes. But no one, to my knowledge, is insisting that that is a detail at the moment. It costs next to nothing to do. And it will significantly, in my opinion, reduce the impact of leaks on flat roofs. Surely. That's an example. Are you thinking the same way?
Exactly, I am. It's not enough to have a code of practice and then walk away and then review that code in 10 years' time. Yeah. I agree with you. We have to be able to gather data, see trends, and adjust the code.
And take action.
Yeah. Exactly, by by adjusting the code and, doing the right compliance, redesigning what compliance means. Mm-hmm. So I think we need to be faster with that. We need to be more sleek with that, and I think that's what you're saying as well.
I think we need to be faster. I think we need to be consistent. The biggest problem with data, based on my experience, which is probably not vast, if I'm honest, but it's significant and specific, is that the way things are recorded interpret different outcomes. So you could have you could let's stick with flat roofs. You've got flat roofs leading to 80% of claims, for argument's sake. It's not, but just for the sake of it. But does that include GRP flat roofs? Does that include single ply membrane flat roofs? Does it include hot melt flat roofs? We need to break this down. The data's not actually good enough in many instances. It says flat roof leak, great. Yeah. Someone's then going to go and find out, well, hang on, we've got 3,000 flat roofs here. How many of these were the same? Yeah. How many of these were geographically positioned in different areas? Yeah. What's the impact of weather systems? So it makes it really difficult, but highly necessary to record information, but to record information properly.
Exactly.
And without that, it will still help, but the better the information can be. And I think this is where you talked about AI. I'm not massively into it yet. I'm one of those guys that's still sort of sat watching, waiting for it to take over the world, like War of the Worlds. But I get it because it is quick and it is. I've dabbled with it, sort of like, just on my desktop, if you will, and it's quick and it's effective, but it needs to be monitored properly. So what we need is a system that everyone invests in that says, all right, we agree to share this data in this format to this system, and then it comes out, and then we work, we learn, and then we redevelop.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. I think you put it so nicely.
Oh, good. I have my uses occasionally.
Yeah.
But no, it's good. Well, so that's something to continue thinking about, right? And I know that I don't know whether you watched it, but one of the earlier podcasts that we did when we were in the old studio actually was with a guy called Phil Chell. Okay. And Phil has a model called Chinedu AI, and he's using it for contract stuff, so for tender discrepancies, etc. But he really understands how that works far more than I do, and I do wonder whether in the future I ask him to come back at the same time as you, and we develop that.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. And I dare say that's what the golden thread principle is trying to achieve, where we can integrate all this data, categorize it, and use it to improve the industry. So, yeah,
we should definitely look at that.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the future beyond us for a moment. Oh, thankfully, it's a long way away, I think.
All right,
but time flies. Time flies.
Yeah.
Ultimately, there will be people coming through the ranks now, through school, through college, through tech, through university, however they want to do it, that are going to want to come into our industry. And I think this leads back to another podcast I did more recently, which isn't out yet. So it will be by the time we release this.
Right.
That talks about general cultures and making the built environment a more sustainable and not friendly as such, but collaborative and acceptable place to work. But then I want to zero that back into what we're talking about, because I think there's still a very dominant culture of litigation in our industry. I think it's very much we start off with a view to defending ourselves. I don't particularly talk about you and I, but contracts in terms of investors and contractors and developers, etc., so on and so forth. And I talked to Richard O'Brien about this actually more recently. I don't know if you've seen that one yet, but anyway, we're on the same page with it, because it's sort of like, well, how do we get away from this defensive standpoint? How do we get into a position where people do want to collaborate, where people do want to succeed? Naturally, people will always look after their own asset, and that's right. Because there will always be people that want to take advantage, and that's not right. But on a human level, what do we need to do as an industry when we bring people in to instill these cultures of collaboration, of forward thinking, of peer review without personal criticism, etc.? How do we break down those barriers? That's my question.
It boils down to data.
Okay.
It boils down to data. If we all can step back and allow the data lead us, it takes away every personal interest, more or less, and it allows the industry, it allows the industry grow, and it allows the industry to be led by something that's more or less beyond us. So how do I mean? If people, like we mentioned earlier, if people knew exactly from pure categorization the exact statistics around failures, and not just professionals, but the developers and everyone in the mix knew, and there was that aspect of work going on site, for instance, people already around the table know what to expect or what to look out for. And when those defects, or those not defects, but when those records come through, and we're almost seeing the same thing, it's clear that, okay, this is a trend. And it becomes clear that we're all in it together, rather than pointing fingers. I know there's litigation. contracts are how things work. We have to hold ourselves, the different stakeholders have to hold themselves to a contract, right? But it becomes less the focus when we have data and when we're able to say, look, this is the data, this is the problem we're solving, let's come together. Yes, there's there's the contracts and all that. We will abide by it because the contracts set the rule of the game. But we can keep those rules a little bit by the side and know that what we're trying to ultimately achieve is to reduce this statistic or to deal with that statistic and to ultimately guarantee trust.
Yeah.
So I think it all boils down to our mindsets as an industry. We really, I understand when you talk about litigation and all that and how, like you said, people are trying to cover themselves. We're almost coming together to build something and we're already enemies.
It feels like that sometimes, doesn't it? It does.
know?
But do you think that standpoint is because of a lack of understanding? I feel like that's where we're coming from here. So like people are naturally defensive because of the lack of I'm not talking about arrogance or ignorance or stupidity here. And quite the opposite. The people that are entering these contracts are typically highly successful, driven people, right? So we're talking about educated and capable people. Yeah. But no one knows everything, right? And I think that's what creates, certainly speaking from personal experience, I am naturally more aware of situations that I don't fully understand and protective probably in that setting. Yeah. So listening to what you've said, if we can create clarity through data,
exactly,
then that should by default reduce friction in the process, and also maybe allow people to lower their guard a little bit and be more collaborative.
Yeah,
I think that's a fantastic. It sounds like a utopia, really, but you have to aim high, don't you? You have to aim high if you want to make a change, and nothing changes unless you fundamentally remove inputs and put new ones in.
Exactly.
So that's where we're heading.
Exactly.
And
so this comes down to very simple things like using the right or using new applications for recording, taking site records. Yeah. Using the most recent app, if you can, updating your systems, your data collection systems that will tell you the date, the time, the second when this activity was carried out, not limiting ourselves to the standard inspection test plans, but improving on them, making sure they provide the right timeline so that people aren't arguing about what has happened, or there's more clarity. There isn't friction, because friction comes from when there's that subtle possibility that someone could be trying to hide the facts.
Yeah.
So I think one way, certainly a way to solve what you've just said, is really embracing AI and really embracing technology, but doing it in a controlled way.
We have to do that, because there will be people that contra that argument and say, well, actually, are you using AI? Is AI using you? And that is an argument. I understand, but you're right. Through the right products and through the right sort of safety mechanisms, then the collection of data for the benefit of AI is really what we're talking about here, isn't it? As opposed to allowing robots to do our jobs for us. Exactly. So it's the use of AI.
Yeah.
Rather
so
than
for instance, at Structural Diagnostics, what we've done is we've gone through. We've used AI to investigate the trends over the last 3 years in the reports that we've been doing.
Okay.
So we have a better understanding of what the usual flags are. We can advise clients on saying, okay, you have a 9-story building. When we inspected, these were the usual defects, obviously without naming names or naming sites.
Of course,
but this is incredibly helpful, and that these sort of records can be categorized better using AI.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So,
it's a permanent memory, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Really so you're collating data for your own benefit now, and that seems to be forming trends for you.
Yeah.
We're about halfway through the year. If I was to give you a deadline of the end of the year, how far do you think you will have got with that?
Oh, okay. So we have an internal deadline, more or
Okay.
less, and we actually definitely surely before the end of the year, but in a couple of months, are trying to get to that point where we can give some definitive advice to our clients regarding trends and possibly to some publications. We are in a very, 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 very good time, technology wise, and for companies like ours that have had the opportunity to have carried out inspections over these few years, we're able to we've got some data that we could sort of understand better, and so yes, surely for the rest of the year, we still got work to do, obviously, and but we're learning, we're extracting data from data and extracting intelligence from data, and hopefully would keep learning and understanding what the data is trying to tell us. Basically, at the end of the day, like I've mentioned, we're trying to do better at protecting trust.
Yeah.
And if the data has anything to tell us, we want to listen to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Take you back to what you started with. You stood there and you watched the building fall down, the most tragic of circumstances. Yeah. Anything we can do to do our jobs better, to prevent a recurrence of situations like that, has to be the one and only drive in terms of how we orchestrate ourselves in our industry. Yeah. If you could give some advice to our peers, taking all that in, what would you like to say right now?
To our peers, I would like to say, let's do more collaboration. Guaranteeing trust isn't, it has to be done systematically. So it has to be a collaborative effort. And you remember the instance I cited earlier of the defect in the building, we talked about earlier. There's no reason why we shouldn't embrace the input of all aspects of industry, especially when these very high investments products are involved, you see. So I would say to peers, the more we work together, the better the product, and it's we should be open to collaboration.
I agree.
I would also say to developers, and I can't say this enough, get the right team around you as early as possible. If I could speak to developers, I'll say, get ACS in as quickly as possible. Speak to someone, speak to Ben, get the right insurer, get someone to give you the right advisory services on time, sooner rather than later. It's incredibly important in guaranteeing that trust to the public, to yourselves, and to everyone that's a stakeholder in creating the built environment that we want for future generations that will last. So I think this is it for me. Yes.
Well, look, I mean, it's very kind of you to say that, and I thank you for your trust in me for you to say that, because I promise I didn't pay you for it. But I agree. I think not just us, but everybody. Yourself, fire engineers, everybody. Let's start working together early.
Exactly.
Let's embrace it and let's learn from the past.
Exactly.
Chin, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Same here, Ben.
Thanks so much. There's more to do. We'll definitely get back here. Maybe a small panel, including someone to do with AI. Maybe Phil, if he's available. Maybe a few other people, because I just feel like there's more to go at. And I very much enjoyed our conversation.
Same here. Same here. Thank you.
You're welcome.